Hello, class 6 students. How are you all? So I hope all of you are absolutely fine. So today, Prerna Man is here to teach you chapter number 5 of your textbook. Now, I'm sure all of you remember that in the previous classes, what is it that we were studying? We were studying the various civilizations, correct? And we studied about how we started with that how man was into Stone Age, and then there were 3 different Stone Age, the Old Stone Age, and then he moved on to Mesolithic and then to Neolithic Stone Age. And in the Stone Age, probably and mainly the last Stone Age, the Neolithic Stone Age, was when man actually started getting into the occupation of agriculture, of farming, and he started living a settled life. So once he started living a settled life, then after many years, when this thing continued, the birth of civilization happened. And what do we mean by civilization? When people are living harmoniously in communities, when they are living in groups together in a very peaceful manner. So the first civilization that we talked about was the Indus Valley civilization, wherein we basically talked about how rivers mainly became the area or the place where civilizations took place. And why did this happen? I told you the logic behind it, that because man was mainly involved into farming activity, into the occupation related to farming and other things. So he knew that rivers were a constant source of water for the plants, for sowing the seeds or whatever farming related activities were there. And because water was one of the basic necessities, so he decided to settle near the rivers. And Indus Valley civilization, the first civilization that we talked about, was one such civilization, and it is also known as Harappan civilization. And then we discussed what were the various sites where or places where these civilizations were found, what was the architecture like, how the houses were built, how the administration was there. So various phases about, or various aspects rather, about the Indus Valley civilization. Similarly, we studied about the Mesopotamian civilization, then how this civilization came into existence, and we studied the social aspect of it, the economic aspect of it, and how these people had contributed to mathematics, to science, right? So, and the first time when we started talking about this various civilizations, we basically spoke about 4 major civilizations. So in today's class, in chapter number 5, we are going to study the third very famous civilization, which was the Egyptian civilization. What was the name? The Egyptian civilization. And I'm sure most of you by now, with the name itself, it is self-explanatory that we are talking about Egypt, how this civilization came into existence, correct? So page number 38. All of you open up to page number 38 in your textbooks, and then we can start with the chapter. Okay. All right. So obviously, like we always study, the first point of any civilization, we study how the civilization emerged. So the Egyptian civilization emergence, it flourished between 3000 BCE to 300 BCE along the banks of Nile River. So like the Indus civilization was near River Indus, the Mesopotamian was between the land between the Euphrates and the Tigris River. So this Egyptian civilization, as you can see, this is River Nile, on which the entire, or around which the entire civilization started emerging. And it says Nile River is the lifeline, or was the lifeline, of the ancient Egyptian civilization. Why it was the lifeline? It is understood to us by now, because most of the activities, the occupational activities or the economic activities, could be carried out because of River Nile. And the valley of the Nile, it became fertile due to alluvial soil that the Nile deposited on its bank during annual flooding. And the Nile also served as the highway for trade, travel and trade. So occupation activities, like I already told you, related to farming, and the economic activities of trade, these were carried out because of the presence of River Nile. So here you can see the River Nile, and then you can see the Upper Egypt and the Lower Egypt, how it is divided. Okay, and then these are certain places that we will study about. Okay, so emergence happened due to river Nile. Egyptian civilization was divided into two main regions, that is the lower and the upper, the map of which I have shown you. To the north was the lower Egypt. Now don't get confused, ma'am, north is upper. So how come it was lower? So it was divided like that, probably reasons best known to them. So the northern part, because even here, you might have got confused, ma'am, lower, this seems like upper, but no, it's not like that. Okay, so to the northern part was the lower Egypt, and then to lower Egypt and the upper, north was lower Egypt, in which Nile River formed the Nile Delta. So can you see this triangle-like structure? This triangle-like structure is also called as delta. So this is where lower Egypt was found on the northern side. And then to the south was upper Egypt, like I've already shown you. Greek historian Herodotus. So Greek historian Herodotus he's a very known personality. He had described, so what did he call river Nile, or how did he describe it? He says that Egypt, this place called Egypt, it is the gift of Nile. So much of, you can probably say, love or respect he had for Nile River, that he said that Egypt is born because of river Nile, which of course is true to a large extent, because had river Nile not been there, the civilization probably would have never happened. So coming about or reading more about the civilization, as I told you, it began around 3000 BC with the unification of the upper and the lower Egypt. So the two parts, the northern and the southern part, when they merged, the civilization started under the first pharaoh. So what is exactly is this pharaoh? So pharaoh was the term which was used for the ruler, or the title it was given for the Egyptian ruler. Like in India, let's say during the certain dynasties which came into existence. So we use the word king. A lot of places we use the word monarch, right? But in Egypt, the word used was pharaoh. Okay. And a very interesting thing about Egyptian civilization that I want all of you to understand is the word pharaoh was also used for female Egyptian rulers. So when we talk about female being rulers, what is it that you come to know about Egyptian civilization? Any guesses? That it was not really a male dominant civilization. So in Egyptian civilization, even females were given that liberty, were given that respect, were given that status to rule. So as I keep on telling you that these civilizations, we're talking about thousands and thousands of years ago, but imagine, like for every civilization I've been saying, that people had so much of creativity, so much of open-mindedness these people had. Time periods of the three kingdoms in ancient Egypt. So there were three kingdoms. So first is the old, middle, and the new. Old kingdom was from 3000 to 2000 BCE. The middle one was from 2000 to 1700 BCE, and the new one was from 1700 to 1100 BCE. Okay. So again, what is it that ma'am has been telling you related to your science and math subject? The way you learn formulas, how do you learn it? You practice it, you probably write, you make tables out of it. Similarly, for social science also, particularly for history, you need to prepare certain tables which you can put on your study area. Okay, now we come to the social life. So if you remember, for Indus Valley civilization, we basically studied a lot of things related to their social life, how people were organized. For Mesopotamian civilization also, we studied how people were organized. So in the Egyptian civilization also, the society was divided into few sections, into few areas. What were these? Let us have a look. So first, let me show you a picture of what the social structure was like. So the social life, can you see this pyramid-like structure, a triangle or a pyramid-like structure? So you see there's a pharaoh, which is the ruler or the king of Egypt, then vizier, then nobles and priests, then scribes, soldiers, craftsmen, farmers, and slaves. So is it like it was divided into 4 or 5 classes? Not exactly. So some group was a part of of upper, some of the middle, and then some of the lower. What exactly were these? We'll understand that. But first, how the structure was in terms of family. Let's understand that. So father, he was responsible for the economic well-being of the family, and children were expected to give due respect to their parents. So see, when we talk about moral values, so many years ago, a civilization happened which also believed in the concept of moral values, and it was an expectation that as a child you need to respect your parents, and it was a fundamental duty of the eldest son or sometimes daughter was to take care of his or her parents in their last days, that is particularly during their old age, and to ensure that they received a proper burial. So something that I spoke to you just in the previous slide, that how this Egyptian civilization can be said to be modern in their outlook, because they gave women the chance of ruling the country or the civilization. And here also we started that how it was not just the son who was responsible for the parents, but daughters were also given that right or that status that they even were allowed to take care of their parents. So it wasn't, as I told you, it wasn't really a male dominant society. So now coming to this pyramid-like structure. Okay, let's have a look at your book. Okay, so this is your textbook. So here I will explain you. See, in your book also the map is given of the Upper Egypt and the Lower Egypt. Okay, so let's talk about the different classes. So it says that the upper class, it consisted of the pharaoh, his chief, that is the vizier, and the high priest. So the first three people who were given in that triangle-like structure were of the upper class: the pharaoh or the king or the vizier, and the nobles and the high priest. Then middle class, it consisted of artisans, traders, basically people who were involved into a lot of economic activities, manufacturers. And lower class, it was made up of farmers and the slaves, right? Or more or less the farmers. So this is the structure that I have shown you, correct? So these three people, the set of these three people made the first class. Then you had the middle class, these two, basically these are also three, and then these were the lower class. Okay. Now, very interesting fact of, about the religion of the Egyptian civilization. So one very important thing about the Egyptian civilization, so like we discussed about the Mesopotamian gods also, how they had a ziggurat-like structure, how priest was so important. So in Egyptian civilization, there's been a lot of text about their religious belief, the gods that they worshipped. Like in the Indus Valley civilization, we know that man worshipped the various aspects of nature. So more or less the same was the case in the Mesopotamian civilization. Even in the Egyptian civilization, the aspects of nature were worshipped, but as gods. So probably they had certain beliefs, and like we have different names for God. So we have Shiva, Lord Shiva, we have Lord Hanuman, Lord Ram. So we also have some names for gods, correct? And we pray to them for different purposes, or probably whatever our beliefs are. Similar was the case with the Egyptian civilization. So they also had certain deities that they worshipped. So Ra, he was the god of the sun, of S-U-N, not S-O-N, S-U-N. Or like we have Surya Devta in our country. So in Egyptian civilization, it was god Ra. And the creator of the universe, or he was the source of life. So we call sun as the source of life also, correct? So Ra was the son of God. Then you had Bastet, who was the goddess of cats. Then you had Thoth, the god of wisdom. Then you had this was the mother goddess of sky, of magic and wisdom. And then various other gods also. So if you have a look at your book, so here you will see certain names. All right. So religious beliefs, they had a great influence on art, medicine, astronomy, literature, and of course the kind of government. They worshipped gods in many forms, like animals, humans, natural forces. So you've seen those images that I've just shown you. So animals such as falcon. You know what is a falcon? It's a bird, or a vulture, or cobra. So snake, dog, cat, and crocodile represented their gods. So if you look at it, the chief god was Re, or Ra, the sun god. So you see this god, he has the body of a human being, but somewhat face, which is a mixture of sun and snake and bird. And the pharaoh was considered as the son of Ra, or he was the son of sun. He was the son of fun, correct? Then the other god, the god of creation. Then you had Hathor, who's the god of music, dancing, basically god of arts. Horus, the god of sky. And of course, very important aspect about the Egyptian civilization related to the religious aspect was that they had firm belief in afterlife. They believed in reincarnation. They believed that yes, a person who leaves this who leaves us in this lifetime will be reincarnated, and we don't know where that person will go. So that is why they've started this process of mummification. What exactly was mummification? It was basically preserving the body of the dead. So if you have, which I believe most of you would have seen, that the body was covered in entire bandages. And another interesting aspect was that what these people used to do whenever a mummy was buried, along with that, they used to keep certain things, even things like food and water, and along with that, certain things which were that person's favorite. So let's say there's a man who had a lot of love for tools, for example. So when this man was buried or mummified, the tools were kept along with that person, assuming the fact that he or she will need these in the next lifetime. And whenever a pharaoh or a king was buried, so he was buried with a lot of jewelry, with a lot of money, things like that. So he had a lot of you can say a lot of things in abundance that were buried along with a mummy. Okay. Should we move ahead? Okay. So I hope all of you are following the presentation. Okay. Let's move forward. So we've spoken about the mummification, and I've told you that they preserved it and kept it in the tomb along with the things that could be used by the dead afterlife. And the pharaohs, they were buried in huge pyramid. We know what a pyramid is, filled with riches. So when I talk about riches, that's exactly what I just told you: the gold, the jewelry, the ornaments, and with a lot of rich art and craft things. Okay, now we talk about the administration, how the country was, or how the civilization was ruled. Pharaoh enjoyed absolute power in the administration. Why? Because he was at the apex, or at the top of the social structure. He was the chief priest, the supreme military commander, and the head of the government. State officials collected taxes, supervised irrigation and construction projects, and took steps to maintain peace and order. So ma'am will say the same statement which has been talking about in almost all the chapters, that is how these people were so advanced. The country was divided into 42 administrative regions called nomes. Like in our country, how is it divided? It is divided into different states, and each state has its own chief minister, and then you have the president and the prime minister sitting at the center governing the entire country. Same was the case with Egyptian civilization. So the pharaoh was the main ruler, and the civilization, the area, was divided into 42 administrative regions called nomes. And talking about the economy, much of the economy in the ancient Egypt was controlled by temples, somewhat similar to the Mesopotamian civilization. They collected and stored agricultural produce and goods and redistributed them among people. More about the economy. What was the occupation? Farming, we all know. Pottery, weaving, carpentry, and fishing were the major occupations. And they cultivated, what were the crops? So wheat, millets, barley, all these were also produced or grown during the ancient Egyptian civilization, and vegetables and fruits. And cattle was the most important livestock. That is, cattle was used for farming related activities. And of course, we know that trade was an important activity. In the very first slide, we studied that River Nile was used for trade purposes, and people transported goods on camels and donkeys as well. So the land transport was also used along with boats and ships. Okay. Now we come to the writing, art, and craft. So they developed a script for writing with symbols or pictures, and they used reed plants both as pen and paper to write. The paper-like material which was used by the Egyptian, it was called as papyrus by the Greek. So papyrus called it as the Greek, Greeks called it as the papyrus. And Egyptians the artists or the artisans, they were master sculptors. That is, they were very good with the art of sculpture. What is exactly the sculptor? Sculptor is the one who creates some, let's say, showpiece kind of a thing using clay. So they make something out of clay, put it in the sun to dry up, and then when it is hardened, it is probably on it some kind of painting is done. The artisans were also skillful in making metal jewelry and wooden furniture. And the architecture, so huge stone pyramids. So we all know when we talk about the Egyptian architecture, pyramids come to our mind by default. So the huge stone pyramids, temples, dams, and irrigation canals constructed by ancient Egyptians are a proof of their expertise in architecture and construction technology. And these pyramids, if you ever get a chance, please make sure that you visit a pyramid. I have seen a pyramid and the experience is so rejuvenating. It is just an amazing experience to see something which seems just like a stone or a mud structure to us. But when you go inside and see it, it is a beautiful masterpiece. And the Great Pyramid of Giza, we know it's a very famous pyramid. Or maybe you can watch a video about it. It's a very elevating experience. Now, we talk about how the Egyptian civilization contributed to mathematics and science. So the people in the Egyptian civilizations, they were like super intelligent people and they understood basic concepts of algebra and geometry. So, they were the ones who actually started this concept of calculating the area. Why? Because they had to build pyramid-like structures. So how do you calculate the area? What would be the base like? What would be the height like? What would be the width like? And of course, surface areas, like I already told you. Then they devised the first calendar that divided the year into 365 days. And they also introduced the solar year calendar. And they divided the sky into 12 constellations that are the zodiac sign today. We know the 12 zodiac sign. So my zodiac sign, I'm a Sagittarius. Maybe you are an Aries. Maybe you are a Piscean. Maybe you are a Libra, or maybe you are your sun sign is Taurus, or maybe it's Scorpio. These are the different 12 sun signs. And how do you calculate these sun signs, or how do you know what is your sun sign? On basis on your date of birth. Okay, so people who are, I think I'm correct here. So people who are born from 23rd of November till I think about 21st of December. I hope I'm telling you the exact dates. These people are Sagittarius, like me. But I won't tell you my birthday right now. Okay, and Egyptian physicians were specialized in different streams of medicine. Then, how did the civilization decline? So we've discussed about the decline of civilization, that Pharaoh Ramses III, he led Egypt into a war with the sea people, which drained the treasury of Egypt. And by 945 BC, Egypt was conquered by foreign powers of Persia and Rome. So obviously, because foreign rulers came who were more powerful, they were able to dominate the Egyptian civilization, and gradually every sign of Egyptian civilization was completely destroyed. Interesting. So, you might be thinking that, ma'am, we are reading about so many civilizations and how are we going to remember this? In the next class, when we are going to study about the Chinese civilization, at the end of the chapter, I'll tell you how to remember about all the civilizations. What is a simple trick to that? So I've been talking about it in the chapters that I'm teaching you, but still I'll give you the exact, in the exact words, I'll tell you how to learn about all these civilizations, and something that you will never ever forget if you follow what I'm saying. Okay, so meanwhile, read the chapter once again, watch the video again if you wish to, and then what happens when you combine these two things, the book and the video, you will be able to answer all the questions very easily. I'm gonna see you in the next class. Bye bye till then.